How much money have you made so far in your gambling career?
So my gambling career goes back 20 years. I've made over £20 million gambling. Unfortunately, it hasn't been a smooth ride to get to that £20 million. And there are some famous wins and famous losses kind of along the way to get here. The kind of ones that stick out early in my mind, I had incredible success on the first ever IPL game, which was KKR against someone, and Brendan McCullum was batting first, and he ended up getting, I don't know, something like 150 off 70 balls, and they ended up winning by over 100 runs. And I'd bought the supremacy as a spread bet of KKR, and also bought McCullum's runs, and ended up winning, I don't know, £10,000 at the time, which would have tripled or quadrupled my betting bank. It's certainly the first time that I'd won 5 figures. Prior to that, the first time I kind of won 4 figures on a game would have been, I don't know, maybe some Trixie at the final day of the season in the Premier League, kind of like 2006. And then things have really scaled up since. So I remember winning 100 grand, laying Liverpool at Spurs in December 2021. And then over the last couple of years, we've really accelerated the amount that we've been able to get on positions. I've won, I remember winning over £500,000 on the Open in 2022. And then in the past 18 months, I've had 6 occasions where I've won over £1 million on a day, 2 occasions where I've won over £2 million. But like most gamblers will tell you, they often frequently bring up the wins and not the losses. I've had another 8 times where I've lost over £500,000 in a day, and twice where I've lost over £1 million.
How is it possible then to place all of those bets in today's market and get those big stakes on?
Yeah, it's difficult. There are definitely kind of like two sections of the industry: the kind of fully regulated industry and the grey market, where a lot of betting syndicates live. And how betting syndicates typically work is that they will either have credit or deposit arrangements with their various brokers that they use, and these brokers access liquidity pools around the world. And while you might think that, okay, well, why would someone lay me a bet of £100,000 or even £1 million? If they have access to get that bet on at 10 times that level and they think it's a good bet, then they will take your bet and then stake more than you will yourself. Conversely, if the broker has access to multiple syndicates and they are on the opposite side of a trade, then it's easy money for them to just pair them up together, and that happens a lot of times when prices are kind of moving a lot during before an event starts, or particularly in play. Third kind of way, as you get to a large enough size and you build up a good rapport and relationship with the bet broker, you effectively become a bookmaker on their side, where someone will come to you, often via the broker, and want to have a position in the game, and the broker will offer that to you. What that gives is you essentially become the bookmaker, and that gives you the overround in your favour, and that can often tip you from a point of a position where I wasn't going to take a bet in the game, but now I've got the overround on my side. While I might be a bit conscious of someone else taking an opposing side, I'll often be up for taking that.
You spoke a lot about good bets. What lengths do you go to in order to determine whether something is a good bet?
So it's certainly a team effort rather than just any one individual. And I think what's been proven over the expansion of online gambling is it's very difficult for a one-man band to be able to operate on multiple markets globally. I think that it's certainly still possible for someone to have a unique edge in one sport or a section of one sport, but difficult to be able to say, I can make money on top league football and, say, masters level tennis and the PGA Tour. So it's certainly a team effort, and that team effort is not necessarily all human. It is taking in a huge amount of data that's available in the market in various different forms, analysing that data, coming up with your true odds of something happening, and then you get to the stage of execution, where execution is about being able to get the stake that you want on a bet. So if the amount that you want to get on a bet is £10 or £100, which is, given the huge amount of selections that are possible, is still a large stake, it equates to a large stake over a month, you can probably execute well in advance of an event starting. But if you want to get a bet on of £100,000 or more, depending on the sport that you're betting on, you often have to bet as close as possible to the event starting. The reason for that is that a lot of brokers and betting companies will only increase the limits once the starting lineups of teams are announced. So that's very true of football. But some American sports are a bit different. American sports, you can often get your largest stakes on 2 or 3 days before the start of an NFL game. The reason for that is that a lot of Vegas bookies want to have the most accurate lines, and they're quite happy to take what they would describe as sharp money early on, so that they can, lay better lines later.
Do you ever have to take in any sort of weather tips to pick your selection?
Yeah, absolutely. You're always trying to find a unique edge, and I am always happy to listen to anyone that's got any edge on any market, regardless of whether it's necessarily betting focused. I feel that I and my team can analyse any information from a betting perspective. So, for example, I work with a ex-military meteorologist, and what he will provide me is signals that only affect a very small number of events per year. So one thing might be how humidity affects football. In the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, a lot of games were played in Manaus, and humidity was really high. And what it proved is that humidity kind of killed goals. So there were often games where players were just completely devoid of energy, and that decreased the number of goals in the game. Goals is a very interesting one from a weather perspective. If anyone's watched any decent level football, you'll see that before the game and at half time, pitches are very heavily watered to make the ball as slick as possible, which increases the number of goals. But there is a tipping point in the saturation where the ball just doesn't revolve as much on a pitch. So if you can predict when that monsoon is going to occur, you can probably get an advantage where the number of goals quickly declines and drops off a tipping point. Sports where weather is particularly key are ones where weather is taken into account in how markets are settled, particularly on Betfair. And the largest one of that is cricket. So a lot of people won't be aware of this market, but there's a market called the completed match market, where there are often millions of pounds traded on whether there will be 5 overs bowled in the second innings. I've made and lost a lot of money on these markets where you're trying to predict weather patterns. There's a famous test at the Oval where bad light was coming in. I had someone outside telling me which way the wind was kind of blowing. There was a famous cricket test match in the West Indies about 10 years ago, where people were betting on the draw to happen because of a tropical storm. I believe it was called Hurricane Ernesto. And Twitter was getting very excited about it coming in and washing out the test for 3 days. Everyone was driving the price of the draw down. So I had a huge position on backing the draw, and evidently Ernesto chose a different destination to plant himself. So the game was actually over in 2 days, and everyone that backed the draw lost their money.
What is your favourite sport to bet on?
I think that I bet on a huge number of sports, and possibly my enjoyment of those sports has dwindled over time compared to when I was doing it more for fun rather than for a profession. But I am an avid sports fan and enjoy watching all major sports. From a enjoyment perspective, I suppose one of the sports I really enjoy watching and betting on is Aussie rules. There's always something happening. It's high scoring and very unpredictable.
And which sport is your most profitable, would you say?
I think that there is a difference between my most profitable from like an amount perspective and my kind of ROI percent. The most money that I've made is on football, tennis, golf, and cricket.
What would be your advice to improve the average punter's P&L?
I think there are lots of bits of advice you can take. The first one is, don't go bust. And the way to not go bust is to have a staking plan which ensures that never happens. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be incredibly cautious in the way that you bet. And also, if you believe that your betting bank can be topped up from time to time. You can be a lot more aggressive than some staking plans suggested by people. But yeah, in order to make money long term, you have to stay in the game, so you can't go bust. One of the great tools available for users of oddschecker is odds comparison, so they can take the best price available. Even if you've got great analytics, if you can't execute at a decent price, you will lose money long run. So the best guide is to always get the best price available.
You've told us some already, but what's the best gambling story you've ever heard or been part of?
So it probably takes me back to the Winter Olympics. I think it was 2010, where Great Britain had a lot of success in the curling with the women's pairs. And in the Olympics, there is often a lot of liquidity in events that aren't typically priced up by bookmakers. And a lot of professional gamblers think that they can find an edge in any market, more so than bookmakers can price. So I was betting on all sorts during the Winter Olympics, and curling was on the BBC. I think that her name was Gulliver. Anyway, I was watching this market and I couldn't believe it. I was like, this price can't be true. So I was like, let me keep backing. And I was watching this market and it's like, the price now is 4.0. There's no point. They are 2 stones ahead at this situation. They're definitely a 1.5 shot. Anyway, I'm keeping watching the market. My position continues to grow because in betting, if you've got an edge, there's no reason why you shouldn't continue to bet if you believe you've got that edge, if you're below your maximum stake in the market. And given I was betting on curling, my maximum stake hadn't been reached. And then suddenly the market suspends. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm watching it and we're in a great position. I was like, okay, well, sometimes on Betfair, what you get in these lower markets is the person in control of it doesn't know the sport very well. Maybe they've just kind of lent on the wrong button and suspended it. Anyway, 5 minutes passed and the better's settled as a loser. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they've made a mistake on the back office side. And I go and look at my TV and I realise that I'm watching on Sky Plus. And I paused and I'm 10 minutes behind on the delay. Another famous story was the sport of darts is a very interesting story that I've got a lot of history with betting on. And essentially is certainly 10 years ago was a sport played by drunks, but was a sport that was hugely liquid, so you could get a large bet on. And the BDO Tour, which I'm not sure is still around, but certainly for a long time was the kind of subsidiary to the PDC Tour, they were doing one of their worldwide events in Japan. And the legs were the matches were very, very short. So they were best of 7 legs. And the betting strategy was very simple. Take on the outsiders in these games because the standard of players is very low and there was a lot of volatility around the results. And it felt like William Hill had priced the market up based on the best of 7 sets rather than the best of 7 legs. So in a game with the best of 7 legs, there's a much higher chance that the outsider would win the game than there would be if it was the best of 7 sets, which would be over a much longer time where the true difference in skill between the players would come true. So a team of Twitter darts analysts came up with 5 players that were priced at 4.0 or bigger. And the play was just to put them in multiples. The idea of sometimes that if you place in multiples, it's going to go under the radar of bookmakers. The word spread and everyone got onto these bets. Anyway, the first 4 of the 5 actually win. So it comes down to the last leg, the last match. And the player is up, I think he's up 3-1 and he has a dart to win. There's something, I can see it on my head. I think it's something like double 12 to win the match. And he just wires it and ends up going on to lose 4-3. But everyone's kind of working out, what are William Hill going to do in this scenario? They've got multiple accounts that have got these bets on. They've priced up the market correctly based on they're not too far out of line, so we don't think they can use a palpable error rule. They've paid out some of the combinations that have won already, and they narrowly escaped a 8-figure losing day.
How does oddschecker feature in your betting strategy?
Oddschecker has been a site that I've used for my whole career as the kind of premium odds comparison site. And I think the initial kind of first use of it was when I was betting with traditional bookmakers, is to execute at the best price possible. And that's not only just displaying those odds in a nice format, but it's also having low enough latency that I can rely on what I'm seeing on the screen. And now oddschecker have moved into the world of sports data even more, particularly with their plus EV betting tools. I'm perfectly aligned with their strategy of improving the P&L of every user.
What types of bets will you be offering us?
So I will be offering multiple bets per day, and the bets that I will be sending will typically be singles on various sports around the world. Now, a lot of those games will be taking place concurrently, and if a user wants to put them together into an ACCA, that's something I certainly wouldn't put them off doing.
Given your personal betting activity, will you be providing customers with your best selections?
Absolutely. I have signals for hundreds and sometimes even thousands of selections each day, but the bets selected for oddschecker will be my best bets of the day.
What kind of sports can users expect to get from your selections?
There will be a variety of sports offered in the selections that we put forward, including football, tennis, golf, cricket, and pretty much anything else where we have expected value on. In terms of the kind of breadth that we go with in each sport, on tennis that can be down to challenger level and all the way up to Grand Slams. On football, we have data across over 200 leagues in the world, so you could very easily see a selection for the Serbian Premier League or Japanese Division 2.
What sort of markets will we be betting on? Will there be any obscure bets?
Typically, the bets that I focus on, if I concentrate on football, are match odds and goals markets. That being said, there are a lot of alternatives within those kind of like two main categories. So sometimes there might be a bet on over 5.5 goals in a game where I think that that's a particular market where we've got an edge. But traditionally it'll be match odds and goals markets.
What's the weirdest sport you've ever bet on, and can we expect to see some similar selections?
Well, my 20-year career certainly covered the span of COVID, and COVID was a difficult time for anyone that wanted to bet. Fortunately for me, I was able to continue betting on horse racing around the world where it continued. But there was a huge expanse of table tennis betting during COVID, and I hadn't previously placed any table tennis bets, but it quickly became the second or third most popular sport to bet on. And strangely, because of that interest, it now still remains 6th or 7th biggest sport to bet on, even though all sports have returned. While I do have numbers on these obscure sports, I wouldn't expect to be putting forward any table tennis selections anytime soon. Not every bet will win. Please gamble responsibly.